The third story that I gave at the Montana Gallery was in it was November 13th. And at that time, there was three things that really dominated my thoughts. It was free soloing, mutants, and time machines. And free soloing, is anyone familiar with free soloing? Okay, I'll have to educate a few of you. So free soloing is, and Alex Honnold specifically, he's a free solo climber. So rock climbers climb with all sorts of equipment, especially when they're climbing really, really dangerous, lethal stuff. There's a real small, like, kind of subset of these guys, like less than 1%, that will actually free solo, where they will go with no safety equipment. So when they climb, so I was really, really interested in him, and I was interested in mutants because, you know, who doesn't want to have a mutant power? Like, I've always wanted to be a mutant and have a superpower, and so that was on my mind. And then time machines, because my son Gideon had one night he called it a heart fright, and he wanted to talk, so I jumped up in his bunk bed after bunny stories, and he said he was going to build a time machine. And the reason why was really what stuck with me. And but back to the free soloing first, and that's so Alex Honnold, he had this dream to do El Cap in Yosemite. El Cap is a 3,000 foot like granite slab, and it's gorgeous and beautiful and super dangerous. In fact, two guys just in the last few days fell to their death there while roped. You know, really good climbers on the lower portion. So he had for years, like for 8 years, as he climbed, he would climb and would want to free solo it, which is dangerous. And people that free solo, most of those that have made that a portion of their life end up dying. And so it's just one mistake. And that's what got me about him, because when he was talking about it, he would say it's consequence and risk. And the consequence is 10 out of 10 death. Like, if you're anything over 50 feet, you're dying. And so when you're 3,000 feet up, and for 3,000 feet, if you look at the double tree, that's 250 feet. So stack 12 of those high and climb that with nothing other than shoes and a chalk bag. And so it's a terrifying thing to watch. In fact, I would watch it because they filmed it, and I would watch it laying in bed, in a very sturdy bed, on a very sturdy floor, on a sturdy base, and I would be terrified, and my stomach, you're like, oh, like you feel like you're falling. And his friend that actually was an expert climber as well, that they went up with him and kind of set cameras and were filming it. And he even said that they never wanted to do a free solo film ever because it's too dangerous. And to film it, and to film your friend, for one, it's adding extra issues for him to deal with. But he said, you know, you can't help but think about, at any moment, your friend could fall through the frame to his death. And so they ended up filming it. And so when he was talking about it, he said, the consequence is death, but the risk is something I can manage. And so if I can take the risk down so I'm not climbing at a 10 out of 10 difficulty, if I can make it a 4 to 7 range, you know, to scale of 10. If I stay there, then it's lowering the risk. And consequence is still death, but I can do that. And so the way they do it is they climb over and over, and they get these paths, and he memorizes them. And he memorizes all the holds and the moves, and they do it with rope, and they go up, and they go up. And so he's doing it with a rope, and there's times he's falling, you know, with a rope. And so you know that it can be fatal. But then eventually, you know, he wanted to do it, you know, without a rope. And so I was just really, really obsessed with watching that terrifying, lethal climbing. And so because of that, I was telling stories to my kids, and I kind of moved outside the bunny world. And I thought, I want to bring a mutant in. And so outside the bunny world, I had to create a character, and ordinary guy, Stephen Edward, and he's a free soloist, of course, as a hobby. That's like what he does. But he's a nuclear engineer. He works at a silo and works with rockets. And so one day, working in that environment, he makes a mistake, does some things he shouldn't. He gets stuck in the silo when the rocket takes off. Rocket takes off and blasts him with rocket fuel. And so he's left there, looks like he's going to die. The paramedics come in, and they work with him. They realize he's about to die, but if they cut his chest open and they put this life-sustaining device in him, then he can survive. But he's been hit with this blast, a rocket fuel, and so he has become a mutant. And so the combination of his mutation and this life, sustaining device has given him super mutant powers. And so what he's able to do is he's able to pause time and extend time. And this device is like a portal that allows him to travel to and from and bring people with him. And so, and it's also right over his heart, which of course allows him to love more deeply. And he's a married man and he has a wife and kids. So he has that life, which is Stephen Edward, and then the mutant life. Now, when he gets blasted, his wedding ring gets fused to his finger. And so, of course, if you're a mutant, you have to have a name. So his name, his mutant name, became Ring Sideroblast. And the engineers and the doctors gave him a very specific code and a number, and it's SF3B1. And that was very specific to them because they're monitoring their mutant and trying to get him to do really cool mutant things. And so I think about that story every time I go to the infusion center. Like I went today, my brother Paul came up today, and he can tell you, they ask you what your name is over and over and over and over again. And I have two middle names, Stephen Edward, Donald Stephen Edward Corcoran, and my kids do, they all have four names, and they all have Edward, which my father's name, the boys do. And so when they ask me 4 times, it's Donald Stephen Edward Corcoran, Donald Stephen Edward Corcoran. And so, of course, if you have studied the science of deduction, you may see that my middle name is the same name as... Yes, so by doing that deduction, you can probably feel like if that's my name and that Ring Sideroblast is Stephen Edward, then of course, I'm Ring Sideroblast. So I'm a mutant. I'm a mutant. And so the secret is out. And I can prove it. I can show you. See how it's shaved all nice there? This is my port. And they cut me and put this in so they can access and give me what we call the white lightning. And a little nod to George Jones. Ooh, white lightning. So we get the white lightning, that rocket fuel, and that rocket fuel is what allows me to live. We'll button this up. My wife is going, button. So this has given me the power to extend my time here, and it's allowed me to pause time as well. And the way that is when you're at the cancer center, you realize that everybody is a climber. Everyone here is a free soloist. And cancer to us is like El Cap. And we're all trying to find that path to life, to the top. And so not everyone makes it to the top. And some of us don't even have that option. A friend, Karen, that her diagnosis was that she wasn't going to make it to the top, but she kept climbing. Free solo and as far as she could. Fantastic climber. I miss her. And she passed last year. She fell through the frame, but she kept climbing. And my friend Sheldon, who had MDS like me, would sit and have infusions with me. And he'd been climbing for a long time, expert climber. I think it was over 10 years. And I went one day and they're like, oh, Sheldon got a little sick. He's got a room. So I went over to see him. When I came in, his family was there, and I realized really quickly that they were saying goodbye, and they were so gracious to allow me to say goodbye. And I saw his grandkids come up and say goodbye. And so you start to realize that as a free soloist that, that consequence is there. But Alex would say this. He would say, sometimes he would climb and he would get to a spot, and there's some pictures where he's on this little ledge, and he's just standing like this. And he's terrified, and he's up thousands of feet, and there's no way to go down. When you get to a certain spot, your path to life is up, and that's it. You cannot climb down. And he said that he had to kind of steady himself, and then he realized later that what he would start to do is just take it in and pause, and he would just breathe in the air, feel the rock, and he would look down and see everything, and just started to embrace the moment. And so you do not have to be a mutant to have that power of the pause. And that is my super mutant advice to you, is find the pause, because the moments are all around you all the time that you can engage in, and there's such depth there. And I found that when I was diagnosed, because there's moments with my kids I would look at them and I just wanted to watch them play endlessly. Or before I might watch them play for a little while and go do something, I just wanted to take it all in. I have a path to life, and I think, and I really believe this, that I'm going to make it to the top of El Cap. I do. I absolutely believe that. I may not, but I believe I will. And it brings me to the conversation I had with Gideon. See, the SF3B1, for me, it means whatever it does to the doctors. The SF3B1, the ring sideroblast, that is actually the umbrella of my blood cancer, is my mutant gene. And it is called ring sideroblast SF3B1. And that SF3B1 to me means super father, 3 babies, 3B, the one. And that's my wife, Riley Jameson, in the story. SF3B1, that is it. That's my mutant number. And when my son had a fright in his heart, and he asked me to come and to crawl into bed with him, I did, and he said, he goes, "Dad, do daddies leave?" And he'd been listening to a story, Adventures in Odyssey, and one of the characters in the story, he said his dad left, and he goes, "Do dads leave? You know, it's quiet, and I'm like, sometimes. My dad left, and he's been gone a long time. You've never met him. You have his name, Gideon Lee Edward Corcoran. You know, so yes, they do." And Gideon said, "Dad, I'm going to make a time machine. That way, if anything ever happens to you, I can come back and visit you whenever I want, and we can talk, and I can hear your voice." And that's why I record my stories. I have 125 stories that they have now that are recorded that they can listen to. And I do that because there's power in stories, and I want them to hear my voice. Because if I don't make it to the top of El Cap, I want him to hear me speaking life into him and telling him who he is, what I see. So I want him always to be able to hear that. And he may, he's so smart, he may make a time machine. But if he doesn't, it's very possible. If he doesn't, and if I don't make it to the top of El Cap, I've constructed for him a time machine with words. They're like a word bridge that he can come over anytime he wants. It's like a portal through time that he can come visit and come back. See, to me, stories are like time machines that allow people to visit wherever and whenever they want. I do believe I'm going to make it to the top of El Cap. I do. But I just want you to know this, that the moments in life are all around you, and you want to embrace those. And that's why this event tonight happened, is because I wanted to be able to share time with my family and friends and share this moment with you. So thank you so much for coming and sharing a moment with me. Thank you for jumping in to my time machine. I gotta go now because I have a mountain to climb.